November 30th, 1989. It's 3 a.m. in Lower Manhattan. The city that never sleeps is unusually still, its streets cloaked in the soft glow of streetlights and the occasional flicker of a taxi's headlights. In a 12th floor apartment, a woman named Linda Napolitano lies asleep beside her husband, unaware that her life is about to change forever. According to her, 3 small gray-skinned beings appear in her bedroom. Their eyes are large, black, and unblinking. A strange language fills the air, and before she can scream, a blue beam of light pierces her window, paralyzing her body and lifting her into the night sky toward a reddish-orange craft hovering above the city. This is the story of the Manhattan alien abduction, also known as the Brooklyn Bridge abduction, one of the most infamous, polarizing, and bizarre UFO cases in history. Over 20 people allegedly witnessed it. A renowned UFO researcher staked his career on it. Yet skeptics call it an elaborate hoax, a story woven from fiction and desperation. In this episode, we're diving deep into the strange, unsettling details of this case to uncover what really happened that night in New York City. Was it proof of extraterrestrial life, or something far more human? But before we dive in, some of the details in this story are disturbing and may not be suitable for all audiences, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. As always, remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to stay up to date with the channel. All right, let's dive into the video.
The existence of an extraordinary phenomenon demands an extraordinary investigation.
When people hear this, do they tell you you're nuts?
I'll tell you, Jay, I wish I was psychotic. At least there's treatment for that.
Linda is simply telling the truth. It's as easy as that.
It's the late 1980s, and New York City is a paradox of glamour and grit. Wall Street is booming, but crime is rampant. The AIDS crisis looms large, and the city's energy is a mix of ambition and unease. In a high-rise apartment in Lower Manhattan, Linda Napolitano, a 40-something housewife and mother of 2, lives a quiet life with her husband, Stephen, and their children. By all accounts, Linda is ordinary, a New Yorker who blends into the city's chaos. But on the night of November 30th, 1989, she claims something extraordinary happened. According to Linda, she woke up, or thought she woke up, to find 3 small humanoid figures standing at the foot of her bed. They were about 4 feet tall, with large almond-shaped black eyes, gray skin, and no discernible mouths. They communicated in a language she couldn't understand, a series of clicks and hums that felt almost telepathic. Before she could react, a blue beam of light shot through her window, paralyzing her. She felt her body lift off the bed, pass through the closed window as if it were air, and ascend toward a glowing reddish-orange craft hovering above the city. Linda's account is vivid, almost cinematic. She described being taken aboard the craft, where the beings performed medical-like procedures on her, probing her body, examining her nose, and speaking in that strange, alien language. She recalled feeling terrified yet oddly calm, as if under a sedative influence. Hours later, she was returned to her bed, her husband still asleep, oblivious to the ordeal. To most, this sounds like a nightmare, a hallucination, or the plot of a sci-fi movie. But Linda insisted it was real, and she wasn't alone in her claims. According to her and UFO researcher Bud Hopkins, over 20 people witnessed her levitating in that beam of light, including 2 security guards allegedly protecting a high-profile figure, rumored to be then United Nations Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar. If true, this wasn't just an abduction. It was a public spectacle in one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. What makes the Manhattan alien abduction unique is its audacity. Most UFO abductions happen in remote areas, cornfields in Iowa, deserts in Nevada, or backroads in rural England. But this happened in the heart of New York City, a place where thousands of eyes are always watching. If aliens chose Manhattan, they weren't hiding. And if it's a lie, it's one of the boldest hoaxes ever conceived. To understand this case, we need to start with the woman at its center, Linda Napolitano, and the man who championed her story, Bud Hopkins. Linda Napolitano was, by all accounts, an unassuming figure. A housewife with no prior public profile, she lived a quiet life in Manhattan, raising her sons and managing her household. But her story wasn't entirely new to the UFO community. 13 years earlier, in 1976, she claimed to have had an extraterrestrial encounter in the Catskills, a story she later shared with Bud Hopkins, a prominent ufologist and artist who'd become a leading figure in abduction research. Hopkins, based in New York, had been investigating UFO cases since the 1960s, publishing books like Missing Time and Intruders that popularized the idea of alien abductions. By 1989, he was a respected, if controversial, figure, running support groups for alleged abductees and using hypnosis to uncover suppressed memories. Linda had been attending Hopkins support groups before the 1989 incident, sharing her earlier Catskills experience. When she contacted him after the Manhattan abduction, he saw her case as a breakthrough. Hopkins put Linda under hypnosis multiple times, coaxing out details of the night, her description of the gray beings, the blue beam, and a mysterious object allegedly implanted in her nose. An X-ray reportedly showed a curly foreign object in her nasal cavity, but when a specialist examined it later, it was gone, leaving only a nosebleed and a scar. This implant became a cornerstone of her story, a hallmark of abduction cases that Hopkins believed was evidence of alien technology. Hopkins didn't stop at Linda's account. He claimed to have corroboration from over 20 witnesses, including 2 security guards, known only as Richard and Dan, who allegedly wrote to him months later. They claimed to have been parked near the Brooklyn Bridge guarding a high-profile figure, widely rumored to be Javier Perez de Cuellar, when they saw a woman in a nightgown levitating in a beam of light toward a craft. Other witnesses, Hopkins said, included residents who saw strange lights or a floating figure from their windows. His 1996 book, Witnessed: The True Story of the Brooklyn Bridge Abduction, laid out the case in exhaustive detail, presenting it as undeniable proof of extraterrestrial visitation. But the more Hopkins pushed, the more cracks appeared in the story.
There were 23 witnesses.
I thought it was a movie. Special effects.
I don't know why they're keeping it from the public, but we're not alone.
It would become the greatest abduction case ever seen.
The witnesses are what make the Manhattan alien abduction so compelling and so contentious. According to Hopkins, 23 people saw something that night, from apartment dwellers to passers-by. One witness, a woman in a nearby building, claimed she saw a bright light through her curtains, like a spotlight sweeping the sky. Another, a man walking his dog, described a reddish-orange object speeding toward the Brooklyn Bridge. The most significant witnesses, though, were Richard and Dan, the security guards. In letters sent to Hopkins in 1991, they described seeing a woman, presumably Linda, floating in a beam of light, her body rigid, her nightgown fluttering. They were allegedly protecting a high-profile figure, and Hopkins hinted this was Perez de Cuellar, though the diplomat denied any involvement in a 1997 PBS interview. The guard's story took a bizarre turn. Linda claimed Dan became obsessed with her, contacting her repeatedly, and even kidnapping her in 1991 to check her toes for signs of alien DNA, a detail so outlandish it feels ripped from a tabloid. Hopkins never met the guards in person, relying solely on their letters and Linda's account of their interactions. This raised red flags. Why were the witnesses anonymous? Why did their accounts vary? One mentioning fog that weather records disprove, another describing lights that could have been a helicopter or plane? And why did Perez de Cuellar, a public figure, deny any involvement? The lack of verifiable witnesses became the case's Achilles heel. Some theorized the witnesses were real but misinterpreting what they saw, perhaps a vivid dream, a publicity stunt, or a case of mass hysteria. Others suggest a government cover-up, pointing to the alleged involvement of a UN official as evidence of a conspiracy to silence the truth. But without photos, videos, or named witnesses in a city as surveilled as New York, the case leaned heavily on Linda's testimony and Hopkins' advocacy. And that's where things started to unravel. Carol Rainey, Bud Hopkins' ex-wife and a filmmaker who initially supported his work. Rainey was deeply involved in the Manhattan case, attending hypnosis sessions and interviewing Linda alongside Hopkins. At first, she believed Linda's story, moved by her apparent trauma and the vividness of her account. But as the investigation progressed, Rainey's doubts grew. She noticed inconsistencies in Linda's behavior under hypnosis. Her responses seemed rehearsed, almost performative, unlike other abductees Hopkins had studied. Rainey also questioned the witnesses, noting their accounts didn't align and lacked independent verification. Most troublingly, she discovered 16 striking parallels between Linda's story and a 1989 sci-fi novel called Night Eyes by Garfield Reeves Stevens, including details like a levitating woman, a reddish craft, and nasal implants. Rainey's skepticism crystallized into a mission to debunk the case. In the Netflix docuseries, she called it a hoax, accusing Linda of fabricating the story and Hopkins of losing his objectivity. She pointed to the missing implant, allegedly removed by aliens to cover their tracks, as a convenient excuse for lack of evidence. Rainey also criticized Hopkins' methods, arguing his hypnosis sessions planted false memories, a claim backed by psychologists who note hypnosis can create vivid but unreliable recollections. Her most damning accusation was that Hopkins cherry-picked evidence, ignoring contradictions to bolster his narrative. Rainey's claims sparked a firestorm. Linda and her supporters, including Hopkins' assistant Peter Robbins, accused Rainey of personal bias, citing her contentious divorce from Hopkins in 2006 and her fundamentalist Christian upbringing as motives for discrediting the case. Linda went further, filing a lawsuit against Netflix before the docuseries release in October 2024, claiming it defamed her by portraying her as a liar and damaged her reputation. The lawsuit also named Hopkins' estate, alleging Netflix stole his work and misrepresented the investigation. Despite the legal battle, the series aired, reigniting public fascination and dividing viewers into two camps: those who saw Linda as a victim of extraterrestrial intervention, and those who saw her as a fraud exploiting a gullible researcher. Before we continue on, if you are enjoying the video so far, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you don't like it, let me know down in the comments. Your support truly means everything. All right, back to the video. Let's step away from the UFOs and witnesses for a moment and look at the human mind. Alien abduction stories often share a predictable pattern. A person wakes up paralyzed, sees shadowy figures, feels a sense of violation, and later recalls missing time or medical procedures. These are also hallmarks of sleep paralysis, a well-documented phenomenon where the brain, caught between sleep and wakefulness, conjures vivid hallucinations. Add hypnosis, as Hopkins used extensively, and you've got a recipe for false memories. Studies from the 1980s and 1990s, like those by psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, show hypnosis can implant vivid but fabricated recollections, especially when guided by a suggestive interviewer. Linda's story fits this mold perfectly. She reported nosebleeds, missing time, and a sense of trauma, common in abduction narratives but also in psychological disorders or stress-induced hallucinations. Her son, Johnny, supports her, recalling terrifying encounters with beings in their home as a child. In the Netflix docuseries, he describes waking up to see things in his room, his face obscured to protect his identity. But this raises questions. Was Johnny influenced by his mother's story, or did he experience something real? Psychiatrist Johnny Mack, who studied abductees in the 1990s, argued most were sane, ordinary people, not prone to delusion. Yet even he admitted some cases showed signs of psychopathology. Could Linda's story be a product of sleep paralysis, a need for significance in a mundane life, or a genuine encounter with something beyond our understanding? The cultural context matters too. The 1980s and 1990s were a golden age for UFO mania, fueled by shows like Unsolved Mysteries and films that embedded gray aliens and abductions into the public psyche. Linda's story, with its beams of light and nasal implants, feels like it was ripped from a Hollywood script. Was she consciously crafting a narrative, or was her mind shaped by the cultural zeitgeist? The answer lies somewhere between psychology and the unknown. The Manhattan alien abduction didn't just captivate UFO enthusiasts. It became a cultural phenomenon. Linda appeared on talk shows, her story dissected in magazines and later on podcasts like Somewhere in the Skies. It tapped into a broader obsession with UFOs in the 1990s, a time when the X-Files made "I want to believe" a household phrase, and Roswell's 1947 crash was a pop culture touchstone. The case's urban setting made it stand out, amplifying its allure. An abduction in New York City? It was the ultimate what if, a story that felt both impossible and tantalizingly plausible. But as technology advanced, abduction stories like Linda's became harder to sustain. The rise of camera phones and constant surveillance in cities like New York made it unlikely for such a public event to go unrecorded. By the 2000s, UFO sightings shifted from abductions to grainy military footage, like the 2004 Nimitz encounter. The Manhattan case faded into obscurity until October 2024, when Netflix's The Manhattan Alien Abduction docuseries brought it back into the spotlight. The series, with its skeptical tone and focus on Carol Rainey's debunking, painted Linda as a potential fraud, prompting her lawsuit and reigniting the debate. For some, it was a reminder of why they believe in extraterrestrial life. For others, it was a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked belief. The docuseries also highlighted a shift in how we view UFOs, or UAPs, as they're now called. In 2025, with congressional hearings and declassified Pentagon reports, the conversation has moved from abductions to unexplained aerial phenomena. Yet the Manhattan case remains a time capsule, a snapshot of a time when aliens were as much a psychological phenomenon as a scientific one. No UFO case is complete without a conspiracy theory, and the Manhattan alien abduction has a juicy one. The alleged involvement of Javier Pérez de Cuellar, the UN Secretary General in 1989, fueled speculation of a government cover-up. If a high-profile figure witnessed an abduction, wouldn't there be motive to silence the story? Some believers argue the anonymous witnesses, especially Richard and Dan, were part of a security detail ordered to stay quiet. Others point to the lack of physical evidence, no photos, no radar data, as proof of a cleanup operation. In the Netflix docuseries, a UFO researcher suggests the craft was tracked by NORAD but buried in classified files. But the conspiracy angle has holes. Pérez de Cuellar's denial was unequivocal, and no credible evidence links him to the event. The guard's letters, if real, could have been pranks or fabrications. And in a city like New York, with its constant surveillance and nosy residents, a cover-up of this scale would require extraordinary coordination. Still, the idea persists, fueled by broader UFO conspiracies like Area 51 and the 2021 Pentagon UAP report, which admitted 144 cases couldn't be explained. Could the Manhattan abduction be one of those cases hidden in plain sight? So what really happened on November 30th, 1989? Did Linda Napolitano become the victim of an extraterrestrial abduction, witnessed by over 20 people in the heart of New York City? Or was it a hoax, a story spun from sci-fi tropes, psychological trauma, and an overzealous investigator? The truth remains maddeningly out of reach. The witnesses, anonymous and unverified, offer tantalizing but shaky support. The physical evidence, the implant, the nosebleeds, lacks follow-through. Carol Rainey's debunking, backed by her insider perspective, casts serious doubt, but her own biases muddy the waters. Linda's lawsuit against Netflix shows she's still fighting for her story, even as skeptics dismiss it as fiction. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, then check out these videos on the screen now. If you have a topic suggestion, please send it to the email in the description. And as always, remember to like, share the video, and subscribe to our channel. And remember, the only thing scarier than these stories is missing out on our next video.